a grateful recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the Meditated 8 Big Book Study. Tonight, we're starting our reading on page 45, Lack of Power, the first full paragraph in the chapter We Agnostics. I'm just going to recap by reading the last paragraph we read last week, which starts on the bottom of page 44. So if you want to follow along, the sentence begins, if a mere code of morals. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might. But the needed power wasn't there. Underline it. Highlight it. It's just telling us that straight. The power wasn't there. Okay? And the next sentence I've got circled and asterisked. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, that means as driven by our self-will, is not sufficient. And then it says, they failed utterly. Utterly means completely. Totally. So this is just another way of saying, as Bill does several ways throughout the book, self-will, run riot, etc. He's saying here, if you're gonna, all your human resources, no matter what you have, no matter how much money you have, no matter what you think you've got, if you're driving your life on self-will alone, it's not only insufficient to get you where you want, it's going to fail you utterly. Because the solution, as we're about to learn, is a spiritual one. Okay, let's kick off the reading with lack of power. Amy, over to you.
Yeah, does anybody want to jump in first and read page 45, that first full paragraph? Otherwise, sure. I can read. Oh, Karen got it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Oh, sure. So just those 3 lines, so to speak?
Yep. That's
right.
Right.
Yes. We'll stop and then you can go ahead and read that second paragraph the next time.
All righty. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where a power greater than ourselves? Uh-oh, I messed up somewhere here. Oh, well. Obviously, I know it is obviously, but where and how were we going to find this power? I mixed up.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so this is where we know from our previous conversations, anything italicized, pay particular attention. This is where we're really getting a power greater than ourselves. Okay, we've already acknowledged that there's been a substance, whether it's alcohol or whatever, that we've made our higher power. And we can all remember, I'm sure, those dreadful days when all we thought about is, did we have enough? Where were we going to get the next amount? Where had we hidden it? Can I remember where I hid it? Oh dear, I just found something I forgot I hid. And do I need more? Do I need less? Do I need to get higher? Do I need to get lower? I mean, higher power, the power was in the substance. And somebody shake their head if that wasn't the case for them. It ruled our lives. So now we're introduced to this concept that there's something greater than a human power. So we've taken away, step one is like, we're on our knees, right? I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable as a result of my alcohol. I've done my one. That's what we just did. But now, what am I going to replace that with? And this is the beauty of step 2. Step 2 starts to tell us, and this is I have some very favorite paragraphs in this book. So at the end of this paragraph, so I've circled and highlighted power greater than ourselves, because that's what we're talking about. And then I've got an arrow, go to page 55. So please turn to page 55. And we'll get back to carrying on second. This is just a spoiler alert, because Karen, you can read again when we get back, but I'm just going to read this for you, because this to me is where I first got the concept of a higher power. These words still choke me up when I read them. And so we're on page 55. It's the second full paragraph. I have this as God is inside of me, a tab on this very paragraph. I turn to it constantly, and the paragraph reads, actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or another, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives and are facts as old as man itself. And that is just telling us, no matter where you get your religion from, no matter where it's based, no matter what century the text came from, no matter who you think is the head of it, inside of every man, woman, and child is the concept. And what way we decide to run with it, this has opened my mind. Like a cedar tree seed needs a fire to burst open. This is where I first got the idea of, okay, there can be something bigger than Jill that I could actually let go and trust in. All right, Karen, so we're turning back to page 45, and you're going to carry on with that paragraph. Well, that's exactly.
I'm sorry, Jill, I'm too late. What is?
Oh, that's okay. We're on page 45.
Big book?
Yeah, at 45, and it's, well, that's we're on We Agnostics, and Karen is just about to start reading from the paragraph that's second down that start, well, that's exactly what this book is about.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
over to you, Karen. Oh, you're muted, Karen.
You're muted.
There we go. Okay. Let's start at the top. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain. Wait, where did I mess up here?
That's right. No, you're right. And
I
explain our fellowship.
and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored.
Okay, so what we're hearing here, it's pretty straightforward. First of all, that first sentence, underline this book. This is one more place that we're being told our program for living is not found in meetings alone. This is the book. This is why they wrote it. This is the program. We cannot really recover in the true sense of Alcoholics Anonymous if we don't go through the book. Okay, and then it defines the book. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. In one simple sentence, they are telling you right there, if you can get a hold of a power greater than yourself and learn to rely on it, then we can talk turkey. Then we can move on in this game. But the steps are in an order for a purpose. We had to admit our powerlessness over the substance, to be on our knees, to open that husk of a seed, to be receptive to the idea that maybe the God idea, which is what this chapter is about, is the answer. And then all they're cautioning about us here is don't get hung up on the word. You know, I've got HP written all over my book because the first time through I couldn't get God out of my head except for this bearded guy on a cloud, which I certainly didn't believe in. So I put HP everywhere that God appeared, because higher power was a blank slate for me when I came in here. But I knew, I cracked open the idea there could be a power greater than me. And it literally was mountains and trees, Mother Nature. That's my higher power, my tree spirits. That's where I started. And it's developed over time. But that's what they're inviting you to do here. A power greater than yourself. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be Allah, or it doesn't have to be, any particular deity or particular religion. It's spiritual, not religious. So they're making that clear. And they make that very clear in the next sentence. Spiritual as well as moral. We become better people. Okay? And then this is my own little Jillism. On the very last sentence, it says, "For we have reopened a subject which are man thought." And I've put quotes around that, and I've put not God thought. Because for me, I didn't have any other way than thinking, but literally. So this whole idea of accepting a power greater than me, something not based in a provable theory, I'm the yeah but person, right? Prove it to me. So I've written there, man thought, not God thought. Okay, let's carry on. How we move reading now?
Oh, we know how, what?
Yeah, go
What are we
ahead.
doing?
Go ahead.
Was somebody else supposed to read?
I was
Well,
going to ask somebody else, but if you
Oh,
want.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, Ron, would you like to read?
Yes,
You're at the
I'm Ron.
bottom of
I am,
page 45.
right. I am Ron. I am an alcoholic. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit light, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Okay, that's pretty loaded. We've just basically reiterated the fact of what I was just saying, that we're being introduced to form our own concept. So we don't have to take anything that's been shoved down our throat or we've rejected as our definition. It can be, I've heard people say they've used the group as their higher power. AA is their higher power at the beginning. I've heard other sponsors say, if you believe I have a higher power, borrow mine until you find one for yourself. The whole point of this is to just crack open. I feel like for me, this whole process has been like a suit of armor. And I had a visor over my head and a big helmet when it came to the whole God concept. And it got me as far as it had in life, and I wasn't very willing to open any mind to it. But chink by chink, it got chipped away at. And until I became very receptive to the idea, and have even actually actively gone out and tried to enlarge my relationship with God. It's a growing, beautiful, movable thing today. But in the beginning, and if you're anything like me, no, I mean, I had no concept. And some, they're talking about here, some have rejected the concept. So if we're sponsoring, we have to meet our sponsee wherever they're at. If you haven't done your steps for a long time, it's very interesting if you've had a slip, or you're not emotionally sober, or you're just angry all the time and just feel life is not treating you well. to come back to step 2 and just say, do I have control over any of this? Do I really? And that's really what it's inviting us to do here. So, and it's identification. You know how the paragraph started? We know how he feels. You know, we understand, we identify. Okay, and then we get into this idea of omnipresence. Okay, power beyond ourselves. I'm on the top of page 46. The second sentence says power beyond ourselves. You'll often hear a higher power as omniscient, omnipresent. Okay, that means all knowing, all seeing. God is, you'll hear sometimes people will say God is everything or God is nothing. So power beyond ourselves. Okay, and then let's carry on with how could how could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? Okay, I've got written, and then a supreme being is used again, and it's capitalized twice. Okay, and I've got written next to this, it's impossible to define God except for myself. I can't tell you who your God, who your higher power is. Only you can define your own higher power, and it may well it might be an evolving thing. I know it certainly is for me. I know people who have actually changed religious practices and memberships because their understanding of God changed. But we're not talking about religion here. We're talking about whatever you're defining in your own head as the power you choose to define as greater than yourself. The force field, whatever it is that you're connecting with that is bigger than you, that's going to lean on, we're going to lean on that for you for the next 24 hours, one day at a time. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here, the supreme being. And then it says these questions that they asked. Who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. And why was it lost? It's only lost ever if we stop seeking. So if I open my day with meditated 8 and I'm turning my day over to a power greater than myself, I'm still seeking. I start my day with seeking. Okay, let's carry on with the reading.
Yes, we have agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend the power, which is God.
Okay, that paragraph has no more than 4 different colors and types of underlining in my book. And the reason is, this is the first introduction we have to the set-aside prayer. Okay? This paragraph is super powerful in that it's telling us that prejudice. So we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside, circle that word prejudice, and express, and then circle the word willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Okay, that is the beginning of the prayer we say at the beginning of this meeting. And there are many different versions of the set-aside prayer. The Bronx uses a slightly different one, but the whole idea is that we're coming in here, and instead of having a bunch of preconceived ideas about what we're going to learn, what this experience is going to be like, what we're not going to learn. Well, I've done big book studies, they're all crap, you know, or I've hung out with this crowd for quite long enough, I'm not going to learn anything new tonight. If you open your mind and come in here and set aside everything you think you know, which is a prejudice, and open your mind to the chance that maybe, just maybe, You're going to let yourself listen and open up to what you might do so that the tools in your program are just going to help you live happy, joyous, and free. So this paragraph is super important because it's saying this is how we need to approach God if we're stuck, or the idea of a power greater than ourselves. Let's just crack open that little place in our mind, one little bit, and entertain the idea that maybe, just maybe, there is a power greater than, and then use your own name. And then think about how pompous it is to think that we are the director and control everything and we're our response. And what a weight we have to carry if we believe that. So we've got two words here: willingness to believe and prejudice. Those are the key words we want to keep out of that paragraph. All righty.
Much of our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe, under the totality of things, we began to be possessed by a new sense of power and direction. Provided we took other simple steps, we found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Ron. We're just going to stop there. Okay, so it's saying we can borrow someone else's idea of God at the beginning of this, but we can certainly choose our own. And I know the Whistler group called the group the higher power for the young men and women who come in there that can't quite get their head around. And they call the group the good old drunks. So the good old drunks are the higher power, the group itself. And then it's our own conception. So again, I'm emphasizing, don't get hung up on the thinking about this is about religion. And the other thing that after this chapter, he doesn't say a power greater than ourselves every time he uses the word God. So if you jump into a big book study or doing the steps, in jumping in, say, in chapter 5 or how it works or whatever, without really understanding, this is your concept, your very own concept, then you can start to think that religion is being preached at you. And that's why it's important if you're going through this with a sponsee and someone who's not familiar with either religion or AA, and they look at the steps printed up there and it's God, 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 God. I know what my reaction was when I first came in the rooms is I thought this was definitely associated with a particular denomination. They were trying to sell me a book. There was a basket that went around at the end. They stood up and hold hands and chanted. I was convinced I'd walked into some sort of cult. And I know today that AA is not associated with any particular religion or denomination. So it's our responsibility in step 2 to make this very clear. If we don't have an issue with it ourselves, then we need to really understand that our sponsee, we have to find out where they're at on the God idea. And it can be it has to be something that we learn to get comfortable talking about, because it's a spiritual based program. So if we can't talk about it with our sponsee, or the sponsee is avoiding it, or you're doing your own work and you're not asking yourself these questions, even if you attend church or mosque or synagogue or whatever, every day, that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a spiritual program. It means you've got religion and certain, devotions and such in your life. But are you living a spiritual life as envisioned in this book? It's a different thing. Is that clear to everybody? Super important that we understand that. Okay. And then it's saying to us, it's giving us, as soon as we admitted, circle the possible existence of and notice how he's cleverly capitalize this now. So every time you see a capital, he's using another name for what your God might be. Creative intelligence, spirit of the universe. And he'll do this throughout the book. I haven't counted how many different names he uses for God, but there's dozens of them. Okay, and then he says, we begin to be, now, so here's the condition. The condition was the possible existence. You got to crack your brain open to the idea of God. This is the God idea we're talking about. And then, so that's the condition precedent. And then the promise is, we begin to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction. Well, why? Because it's not all up to me. When I'm in self-will and I'm acting in my alcoholic nature, I get into ego and I somehow think that I am going to change your life or my life or someone else's. And I forget it's not down to me. My test results, my life, my relationship, those who are alive and not alive around me, my economic situation, there's only so much I can do in terms of my own activities to try make things go a certain way, but I can't direct a result for any one of those. And once I let go of that responsibility and start to live and pause and accept the result that my higher power is bringing down the tubes, boy, what a relief. Just think of all the things that we might still be trying to order, make happen, make people do things, make certain things. And just think about what a relief it is to let go of that. And just pause and say, well, thy will be done. I've done everything I can on my end from a practical point to get a result. Now it's up to my higher power. And that's what it's promising here. And then it's saying, this is our new sense of power and direction. And then there's the big proviso. Okay? Faith without works is dead. Underline this one in red. Provided we took other simple steps. Provided we do the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no shortcuts. And believe me, if there were shortcuts, I've tried them all. I danced around this room for decades. I relapsed endlessly. I never had a program. I never had a sponsor. I read the books. I could quote all kinds of pretty little speeches, but I didn't understand how this works because nobody ever showed me. And even if they were trying to show me, I wasn't listening because I was still more interested in continuing to drink or do whatever I was doing. Okay, so huge promise there. We found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek him. In other words, once you start to believe in a power greater than yourself, little by little, slowly but slowly, the responsibility is taken from our shoulders and life evolves as it's meant to. And then we start to get a bit chill about it. And then it says to us, okay, here we go again, the realm of the spirit, it's capitalized, is broad, roomy, and all-inclusive. There is a God concept for every one of you because it's your own flippin' concept. Okay, and then it says it's open to, we believe, to all men. In other words, this is AA. And somebody said to me at this point in a meeting that how could there be a God? Because they'd killed 2 kids under the influence of alcohol, and they were charged with vehicular manslaughter, and they did time in jail. And if there was God, then God wouldn't have done that. And the answer I was given when asked this question, because I did not know how to deal with it, was what God did with those children being killed had nothing to do with God's will at all, because it wasn't God that got behind the vehicle. It was self-will that decided to take the drink. It's self-will that puts the car into drive. When we act in self-will, we can't then turn around and blame that it was God's will. And that for me, everything that man does is his own free will. My higher power's will is different. And that is where I have to learn to trust, to let go of what I think is going to be the result. And in the end, that's your concept. I don't know if that is coming across, but is everybody getting the idea that this is your own definition? That we're not shoving any concept of any particular type of religion down your throats. Okay, so we got time to carry on at the top of 47. Sorry, we're taking our time with this, but this is super important stuff.
Sherry, would you like to read?
Yes, thanks very much, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Sherry. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Good to be
Hey,
here.
Sherry.
So
When
top of page
therefore we speak
47.
of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was.
Okay, this is the second part of the set-aside prayer. So thanks for that, Sherry. On the previous page, on 46, we circled the word prejudice about halfway down the page. And it said, getting rid of the prejudice against the God concept. Okay, now on this page, we said, okay, we've got our own conception of God. Then it says, do not let any, and circle the word, because there it is again, prejudice, you may have against, this time it's spiritual terms, deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Go back and read the set-aside prayer at the beginning of the meeting. One of the things that it says in there is, please let me set aside everything I think I know about this program, the big book, and all spiritual terms. So we just saw that Bill was playing around with all these different spiritual terms that he had capitalized: creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, realm of spirit. That's just the 3 that appeared in the previous paragraph. So he's just really saying to here, don't let anything deter you from finding your own higher power. You know you're going to need this to get through this program. So let your search be an earnest one, and let it begin with the chink of that door opening. And if you feel a spiritual void, then work on the spiritual relationship. That's what he's saying here, whatever it means to mean to you. And then he says, at the start, this was all we needed to begin with to get spiritual growth, was just to have a consciousness that there could be this idea of something greater than, Karen, Sherry, Johnny, Ron, Martha, Fern, Mandy, Shafina, Hammy, Amy, Jill. There's something bigger than us. And when we get that first consciousness, then our definition and our journey begins. Then it says, afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things, which then seemed entirely out of reach. And you may find that there's a religion that you align yourself with, that you may find, it says in our morning prayer, be quick to see where religious people are right. You get curious, and then you start attending a church or a synagogue or wherever, and then something more resonates with you, and you find there's a whole other group of people you can identify outside of AA. Okay, so that's what it's saying there. And that it says that was growth. But if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. And I think that's a really good place to end tonight, because that is where we all start to get the kernel or the inkling of what a power greater than ourselves are. So let's open it up. We'll stop the recording, and we got to go.